the drama surrounding Bill Maher's latest eruption on live television didn't unfold like a typical late-night monologue or a routine panel discussion. It felt more like a controlled demolition, the kind where the charges have been planted long ago, and all that's left is to press the button and watch the structure collapse inward. From the opening moments, Maher wasn't there to charm or gently rib his own side. He was there to confront it, to strip away the comforting language and expose what he sees as the rot underneath. What followed was not just comedy, and it certainly wasn't subtle. It was a full-throated indictment of a political movement he believes has lost its grip on reality, abandoned common sense, and replaced liberalism with something far more brittle and dangerous. Maher began where many cultural battles now seem to start, with truth itself. Beauty, he acknowledged, may live in the eye of the beholder, but science does not. Science doesn't care about feelings, ideology, or hash. It runs headfirst into facts and stops there. That distinction set the tone for everything that followed, because Maher's central argument was simple and unforgiving. The modern Democratic coalition, or at least its loudest and most influential voices, has declared war on inconvenient facts. In their place, it has elevated emotional validation and political signaling, even when the consequences are obvious and harmful. One of the clearest examples, Maher argued, was the sudden disappearance of the body positivity movement the moment Ozempic and similar weight loss drugs entered the mainstream. For years, he said, the public was lectured relentlessly about how weight was merely a social construct, how health could exist at any size, and how suggesting otherwise was not just rude but morally offensive. Questioning those claims wasn't treated as disagreement. It was treated as heresy. Careers were threatened, reputations smeared, and ordinary conversations turned radioactive. To point out that obesity carried real health risks was to invite accusations of cruelty or bigotry, and yet, almost overnight, that moral certainty evaporated. As soon as a pharmaceutical shortcut emerged, the same culture that once scolded anyone for mentioning diet or exercise suddenly embraced rapid weight loss as a virtue. Influencers who had preached self-acceptance began documenting their transformations. Media outlets that once condemned diet culture now celebrated shrinking waistlines. Maher didn't just find this ironic. He found it damning. To him, it revealed that body positivity was never about empowerment or compassion. It was a fashionable pose, abandoned the moment it became inconvenient. He widened the lens from there, stepping back to talk about human biology and historical reality. Across cultures and civilizations, Maher noted, people have always had some sense of physical ideals, shaped by survival, health, and environment. In eras of scarcity, excess weight could signal wealth or security. In certain isolated cultures, different norms developed, but in a modern society where food is abundant and sedentary lifestyles are common, pretending that extreme obesity carries no cost is not enlightened. It's reckless. Biology does not negotiate with ideology. Carrying excessive fat strains the heart, damages joints, and invites chronic disease. These are not opinions. They are outcomes repeatedly confirmed by data and experience. Maher's frustration wasn't aimed at individuals struggling with weight. It was aimed at a culture that, in his view, lies to them for political or social points. Telling people comforting falsehoods may feel kind in the moment, but it robs them of the chance to confront reality and make meaningful change. To Maher, that betrayal was emblematic of a broader problem. Woke politics, he argued, often substitutes moral posturing for actual care, leaving real people to pay the price when slogans collide with facts. From there, the conversation shifted, but the theme remained the same: hypocrisy. When the topic turned to American comedians performing in Saudi Arabia, Maher's skepticism sharpened. Here was a country frequently denounced by Western liberals for its human rights record, its treatment of women, and its harsh punishments for dissent. And yet, when lucrative contracts appeared, those denunciations softened. Jokes about public beheadings were made, but the underlying point was clear. Principles, it seems, are flexible when the check is large enough. Maher wasn't accusing comedians of uniquely immoral behavior. He was highlighting what he sees as a defining trait of modern liberal activism: loud moral certainty paired with selective application. Outrage is plentiful when it costs nothing. Silence becomes attractive when outrage threatens income or status. Saudi Arabia, he joked, had already learned how to buy legitimacy through sports, and now it was doing the same with comedy. The laughter that followed carried an uncomfortable edge, because the observation rang true. When values evaporate under financial pressure, it raises the question of how deeply they were held to begin with. That same pattern, Maher suggested, has played out relentlessly in American politics over the past decade. He recalled Donald Trump's 2016 campaign rhetoric, particularly the infamous "lock her up" chants aimed at Hillary Clinton. At the time, Maher admitted, the language felt extreme and unsettling. Yet after winning the election, Trump largely abandoned the idea of prosecuting his opponent. He framed it as campaign theater and moved on. Maher contrasted that restraint with what followed: years of investigations, impeachments, indictments, arrests, and relentless legal warfare directed at Trump himself. Whether one loves or loathes Trump, Maher argued, the lesson is unmistakable. In Washington, restraint is not rewarded. It is interpreted as weakness. The political class, he suggested, has learned that there is little downside to pursuing your enemies relentlessly, because norms have already been shattered. That realization led to a discussion of strategy rather than sentiment. If one side uses every available tool to destroy its opponents, expecting unilateral civility begins to look less like virtue and more like Navit Maher's critique. Here was not a call for vengeance, but for consistency. Accountability, he argued, cannot be selective. A system that prosecutes only disfavored figures while shielding allies corrodes trust and invites escalation. When justice appears political, faith in institutions collapses. That collapse, Maher implied, is not an accident but a foreseeable consequence of years spent weaponizing morality and law for partisan ends. The conversation soon returned to culture, where Maher has long felt most at home. He skewered what he sees as the Democrats' obsession with purity tests, particularly in dating, friendships, and social life. Jilting a partner for insufficient enthusiasm about the latest activist cause, he suggested, may feel righteous, but it often masks a lack of substantive contribution. Posting, shaming, and unfriending are cheap substitutes for action. They create the illusion of virtue without the burden of sacrifice. This obsession with moral signaling, Maher argued, has bled directly into politics. Instead of building broad coalitions, Democrats increasingly police their own ranks, expelling anyone who fails to adopt the full package of approved beliefs. Disagreement is treated as betrayal. Nuance is framed as complicity. The result is predictable. Millions of voters feel judged, dismissed, or outright insulted by a party that claims to represent them. Jobs, safety, inflation, and stability take a back seat to symbolic battles that matter deeply to activists but barely register in everyday life. Maher's frustration wasn't that Democrats care about social issues. It was that they seem incapable of prioritizing or persuading. Politics, he reminded viewers, is about addition, not subtraction. When half the country is written off as morally defective, victory becomes mathematically impossible. And yet, election after election, the lesson goes unlearned. Defeats are blamed on ignorance or malice rather than strategy or messaging. The cycle repeats, each time with greater confidence and smaller coalitions. At the heart of this cycle, Maher argued, is what he calls woke ideology, a term he used not as a synonym for empathy but as a critique of a specific worldview. 5 or 10 years ago, he noted, liberalism was grounded in principles like free speech, colorblindness, and equal opportunity. Figures like Abraham Lincoln were celebrated as moral giants. Today, statues come down, schools are renamed, and historical complexity is flattened into simplistic moral binaries. The past is judged exclusively by present standards, and failure to condemn it loudly enough becomes suspect. For Maher, this shift represents not progress but regression. Identity has replaced individuality. Group membership has eclipsed merit. Instead of striving toward a society where race and background matter less, woke ideology insists they matter more, at all times, in all contexts. That insistence